Dla wielu internautów pisanie przy takiej dużej gazecie i prestiżowej jak The Guardian, no to jest wielka sprawa i mi się wydaje, że to może być też dla osoby, która tam pracuje, ale też działa w nowych mediach w pewien sposób ułatwienie, ale może też nie do końca być taką kwestią, która ułatwia też mówienie o różnych rzeczach. Ułatwienie w tym sensie, że oczywiście to jest duży tytuł, a utrudnienie, no bo może, to jest taka moja teza, może nie można wszystkiego powiedzieć.
Well, we have on The Guardian 9 million readers a day, which is, as you can imagine, spans the whole world pretty much. The book's readership is a tiny, small proportion of that, but we do have a responsibility as Guardian journalists to speak within the range of Guardian thought about things. We are very broad, we allow quite strong opinions, but we're not going to go and call out for people to murder Donald Trump or something, which bloggers will do, and we have to be quite careful about repeating what other people say as well, because if there is any problem with, for example, with libel, and libel law is very big in the UK, then if we just repeat what somebody else has said, they will come after us because we have the money. The fantastic thing is that we can reach people in many, many different cultures and of many, many different types of reading. And we can be part of a conversation that joins the world together. And I think in this time, this particular age, we're all separating out, and so it's so important to have a voice that can talk to lots of different cultures in different parts of the world.
Zastanawiam się nad tym, czy nowy język, którym się posługuje teraz internet, bo to jest w pewien sposób nowy język, on jakoś wpływa na to, jak się pisze na przykład o literaturze.
What it influences most is our relationship with our readers, and what we notice is if things remain within a book reading community, usually the conversation is quite good with our readers, and that's in the comments below the line of a story. But as soon as it gets out into the wider public, they get very violent and vicious. And that is the big conversation we're having at The Guardian all the time, is to what extent do we talk back to people, to what extent do we censor their comments, because we believe in freedom of speech, but there is a level of conversation that we cannot host. So we have teams of people whose whole job is to work out where to draw the line, because you can't draw the line beneath somebody who just disagrees with you. But there is a point at which people become abusive, and that's where you draw the line. We don't try to avoid the conversations, but we have very, very difficult conversations around refugees at the moment, obviously around Brexit, which is one of our big subjects. And Brexit is a very good example, because The Guardian, in common with the social democratic media, is pro-Remain, mostly pro-Remain. But a lot of our readers include people who are Exiteers, and we can't cut them out of the conversation, because part of the reason that we have ended up where we are and how America has ended up with Donald Trump is because we have cut those people out of the conversation. They feel powerless, therefore they express their anger in the only way they can, which is to vote in something which is, in the end, is against their interests. We have to absolutely be as inclusive as we possibly can. So we have one of our foundational principles, which are the person who gave The Guardian to a trust. We belong to a trust, therefore we have no shareholders. That's our power, really. And we have this saying, which is, facts are sacred, comment is free. Facts are sacred, comment is free. And if you believe in that, it actually is applicable. It was said in the 1920s, but it is actually applicable to the modern world. People are entitled to have different opinions to you, and we need to listen to them. But we will always regard facts as being, we have to report the facts.
Bardzo mi się podoba oczywiście ta idea, że fakty są święte, a komentarz możesz wygłaszać taki, jaki chcesz, ale czy to jeszcze działa w czasach postprawdy?
How you make it work as a newspaper is you employ reporters to go onto the ground and report what is really happening. And I think that's where the failure of democracy has happened in the last few years in the English-speaking world, is that we haven't had enough reporters on the ground listening And so we have ended up in our own bubble, the commentariat bubble, who could not believe that any country would be so stupid as to elect Donald Trump, or would be so stupid as to vote to leave the European Union. We weren't listening. If we had been listening, then maybe there would be a different result. But we would have had to have been listening 10 years ago. So I think that we in the media have learnt some hard lessons and are having to change the way we practice and to go back to the basics of journalism, which is to have people on the ground reporting what they hear, not reporting what they think.
I pytanie oczywiście dotyczy literatury, bo o literaturze chciałam rozmawiać. Czy pisanie o literaturze w internecie drastycznie się różni od pisania w gazecie takiej tradycyjnej?
Well, there are two answers to that. One is that traditionally newspapers in England anyway haven't had very much literary writing. You have maybe 1 page, 2 pages per week. So now we have, every day of the week we have literary engagement. With that comes the responsibility to think about how you reach a broader readership. It used to be very much about the people who read novels or who were literary scholars who read books pages. Now we're talking to all sorts of different people. And also the internet has enabled us to curate conversations between the different sorts of content. For example, I can blog about a review that I found offensive, or I can blog about how I thought everybody got a book wrong because I think it's a good book and they thought it was a bad book. So it opens up more possibilities, and it also, I like vlogging. I personally don't like vlogging very much because I'm too old to have my picture on the on television. But I like audio. I know. Well, but I mean, yes, it is ageism, but I think we're in an age as well. But I like audio very much because I find I like to have conversations with people. I think audio gives there's a capacity for curiosity, and you're not cut short by the image. And I think often with pictures, it stops at the face of the person, whereas with audio you can just listen to the conversations and you can ask the questions that when you're in print you have to be more opinionated, and in the business of formulating a piece of writing, you're imposing yourself on it more than in audio.
Tak sobie myślę o tych nowych mediach, że one wymagają od nas też takiej prędkości na przykład, żeby bardzo szybko reagować, co nie jest oczywiście, myślę, absolutnie dobrą sprawą. Sam jestem trochę w takim pokoleniu pomiędzy tymi młodymi i starszymi, więc już rozumiem, że trzeba szybko reagować, ale czasem sobie daję trochę czasu na zastanowienie się. No, a ty jak działasz?
Well, working for a place like The Guardian, I'm fortunate to have editors. And even though I'm an editor, I always give my stuff to someone else to edit, because I think to have another opinion is very, very important.
Another eye.
Another eye. And maybe you don't have that if you're a blogger. In which case I say your self-editor is best employed overnight in your sleep. So if you can possibly go to sleep on something and wake up the next morning, often your editor has come into force in the night and you come up with a better piece in the morning. So if you can do that, that is a good thing.
Jak znajdujesz czas na to, by śledzić na przykład wszystkie swoje komentarze, które się pojawiają, czasem ich jest setki pod twoimi wpisami na blogu, żeby to chorobą też taką blogowania i w ogóle internetu, no ale pewnie to w ogóle też wszystkich dziennikarzy jest to, żeby być cały czas w nurcie, żeby być, mówiąc takim językiem internetowym, online. Jak sobie z tym radzisz?
That is the big challenge of the modern world, is how do we find the new boundaries for our time. And I think that we're at the very beginning of something, so we haven't learnt how to. And the boundaries are in terms of time, they're in terms of ethics, there are all sorts of different models that we need to come up with. They're also in terms of how do we finance it when all the money is going to Facebook and Google. Something like 99 cents in every new dollar of advertising is going to Google and Facebook. But in terms of my personal practice, I divide the day up and I protect some day for reading books. I read it in the morning and in the evening. I don't allow myself to be on social media all the time, because if you're on it all the time, I mean every minute of the time, it eats into your brain. Another thing that's very useful is to put your social media interactions on time delay, even if it's only a 30-second time delay, which will just give you just a second to think about if you've spelt something wrong or you've said it wrong.
Second thought?
Yes, second thought, but a second thought can be as quickly as 30 seconds. You press go and you think, oh, I've said that badly, or I miss, even a misspelling. Because also, we're talking about authority in journalism. Authority is really important, and you can blow your authority by misspelling a word, getting a name wrong. Very easily, you become like somebody who's not trustworthy, even though it might just be that you're a bad speller. I'm a bad speller. I've spent most of my professional life protecting myself against my inability to spell very accurately.
Jak sobie tak myślę teraz o tym, co się dzieje na Facebooku, na Google'ach i tak dalej, to oczywiście myślę też o takim wielkim rozczarowaniu, które coraz częściej się pojawia, to znaczy internet okazuje się jednym wielkim rynkiem sprzedażowym i większość sortu reklamowego teraz jest zażerana przez tych największych i okazuje się, że to wcale już nie jest miejsce do wypowiedzi wolnej, nieskrępowanej, tylko to jest miejsce do zarabiania pieniędzy. Jak postrzegasz przyszłość internetu? W którą stronę to się będzie rozwijać?
I think that the internet is at the moment is standing still a bit, I think, because we're all deciding what we want to do with it, which direction we want to take it. But the potential, it is now in our lives. We can't make it not exist. It exists. And I think that actually it gives us massive more potential because we can use it to draw attention to a wider range of things that are interesting. So, for example, in a tweet, in 140 characters, I can draw attention to one piece of writing which draws attention to another piece of writing and another piece of writing. So this morning I was talking to a group of journalists about a piece of writing I did which was 700 words long, which was publicised through a tweet. And the 700-word blog, which was just a blog, drew attention to 7,000 words worth of very serious writing spanning 18 years. So I think that if you think about using the internet as a portal, that's the key, and then and refining how we use it. But the other thing about it, the next thing I would say is that in 10 years' time we probably will be dealing with virtual reality. It will be very different. We're at the beginning of a very big revolution in the way that what literature means and the written word means.
Jak sobie pomyślimy teraz o literaturze konkretnie, to jak myślisz, gdzie będzie się znajdowało miejsce na literaturę w tej przyszłości, o której mówisz?
Well, I think I'll turn that on its head because I'm not a prophet. And so what I will say is that I think we literary people get very hung up on our platforms and on our particular little quarters. And in the end, what you have to think is that reading is a key part of democracy. And that without reading, a child has nothing, they have no power. And that's not about reading novels, or it's not about reading big serious history. It's about being able to understand when somebody's selling you something that you don't need, and you need to be able to say, hang on a minute, and you understand the literature of it. So reading is empowerment.
In a wider sense?
In a completely wider sense. I think reading is the unit that we cannot do away with. Reading and numbers. If you cannot read the culture, you have no power. And that, if you read any apocalyptic literature, lots and lots of science fiction, the disadvantaged people are the people who can't read.
Reading as an understanding the world.
As a tool for analysis, but it goes down to the ability to understand words and to understand the manipulation of words and the manipulation of truth. And that comes back to my post-truth world. So I would say, I absolutely believe we will still be reading. We won't necessarily be reading on any platforms that we use today, because platforms are coming and going quicker and quicker. But what isn't going is the importance of being able to read the world. And in fact, I think the potential disadvantage for people who can't read is bigger now than at any time in the history of humanity. Philip K. Dick said, who's my prophet, one of my prophets, said that technological change is always smaller in the short term than you fear and bigger in the long term than you hope. So I think that actually at the moment the book is very strong. It's given publishers a new reason to produce beautiful books, and they're reinvesting in the concept of what reading is and the connection between reading and pleasure, and e-books have stagnated. But in the future there is no doubt that we will go more towards e-books and e-reading, and it will. I think personally, I think the paper book will become a niche thing, partly because our homes will get smaller and there won't be so much room. Books are bulky things, so I think there are all sorts of reasons which will mean that the physical book will become more of a niche thing.
Yeah.
But reading will not, because reading, we will have other platforms to read on. I have quite a lot of books. In fact, I was selling a flat the other day, a little while ago, and the estate agent who was coming to look at it said, "Have you seen a surveyor recently?" Because he said, "There's so many books, maybe the house will fall down. You need to get an engineer to come and look at the house."
Really? How many?
You know, I don't know. I don't count, but several.
40,000?
Oh no, probably more like, I don't know, 5,000-6,000, something like that. It's not that many. But the houses aren't very good quality in London, you understand.
Pytanie dotyczy oczywiście, mnie to najbardziej interesuje, co się znajduje w Twojej takiej polskiej sekcji biblioteczki. Wiem, że prowadziłeś spotkania z Olgą Tokarczuk, wiem też, że chwaliłaś to, co robi Violetta Grzegorzewska, to co pisze i masz ogromne nadzieje na to, że to się rozwinie w coś jeszcze więcej, ale kto jeszcze?
Again, I'm going to turn that on its head because I don't know what's coming down the line. I do think that there's a new openness, and I think that particularly the Polish community in England is huge still, and it's maturing, and it always takes 10 years for an incoming culture to mature to the point that they can write in English, which is it's what they need to be able to do to communicate fully within the language. But I would say, think of the influence from the past on us. Think of Joseph Conrad. Or, you know, we have some of our great writers are Polish. There is a huge literary connection for us to build on.